anyway. Thank you very much. Well, I'm ready to go, yeah.
There we go. All right.
Are you good?
Yeah, good.
Greetings, one and all. Welcome back to another podcast with Amoda Maa. My name is Kavi, for those that don't know. It has been a while since we've, done one of these podcasts. I think about 3 weeks. We have been very busy with all of the attending to events and everything behind the scenes and the courses that we're doing. And so we just haven't had the opportunity to do it, but now we're back. Greetings, Amoda.
Greetings, Kavi.
Excellent. So today we are going to explore relationship, enlightened relationship. Not every aspect of it. We have talked actually about relationship in one of the very first podcasts we did. This is not, it's going to be slightly different. And when you hear the quotes that I've got, you'll understand the context that we're going to be talking about this enlightenedness of a relationship. Maybe it's a nicer way to say it, instead of keeping it too elevated, but the enlightenedness of a relationship. So let's jump straight in without any further ado. These are 2 quotes from Rainer Maria Rilke, the poet and wisdom speaker. First of all, he said, "Love consists of this: 2 solitudes that meet, protect, and greet each other." And he also said, "I hold this to be the highest task of a bond between 2 people, that each should stand guard over the solitude of the other." So I think the main, word in a way, or phrase that jumps out immediately that I'm going to throw primarily at Amoda is the solitude that we're going to unpack a little bit and look at. How is this different? How is this kind of relationship, this enlightenedness of relationship, very different to the conventional understanding of relationship as 2 halves that come together to complete each other, usually driven by need and a sense of separation, a sense of lack, a sense of, and to put it bluntly, noise. The noise of the agitated self that's seeking somehow completion via the other. I hold this to be the highest task of a bond between 2 people, that each should stand guard over the solitude of the other. Is an extraordinarily beautiful statement that says more than the statement says. It points to something so deeply profound and wise, and that hopefully we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about what that means. Amoda, what does this mean? What does this mean to you?
Yes, there are a number of avenues for exploration in that very statement. Let's examine this solitude, what that means. From a conventional standpoint, solitude gives the impression of a kind of loneliness, an aloneness that borders on loneliness. And this is not so attractive to be lonely. It's not so enticing. But the real meaning of solitude, the real significance of solitude is to know thyself, to know thy true nature, to have gone so far into the innermost that you know who you are as the singularity of consciousness expressed through this individuation. And that's not a lonely place. That's a deep communion with the true self. It's a deep communion with, let's say, consciousness itself. It's the birthplace or the arising of completeness, wholeness. In that deeper solitude, you are whole. You are not incomplete. You're not half of something. You are complete, in the same sense that consciousness doesn't need anything to complete itself. That solitude or that discovery is the doorway to an inner silence. You mentioned that perhaps on a more conventional basis, there's a lot of noise in relationship. Yeah. What is that noise? Let's just look at that. Noise is, we're constantly badgering somebody to fulfill our needs. Yeah. We're constantly criticizing, and this can be very subtle. Yeah. We're nagging, criticizing, blaming, needing something. Yeah. So we're not, in that way, we bring a lot of noise, a lot of agitation, a lot of need, a lot of demand into relationship. And therein lies the battle of relationship. Yeah, when there's two noisinesses trying to meet each other, trying to get their needs met, then that's a battleground. And there's no space in that for a deeper meeting. And so to know yourself and to come into a deep silence within yourself, and then to move into relationship from that or as that, opens up a whole new dimension, a space, a silence, in which the real nature of love can be revealed or touched. Yeah, perhaps we'll come to that. But then, to respect that solitude in each other, to protect that solitude in each other, is really saying, bowing down to true nature, bowing down to the sovereignty of the other and of ourselves, bowing down to respecting, honoring, and listening to the sovereignty or innate intelligence in the other, so that we're not controlling, demanding, wanting them to fit in with our plans, with our desires, with our agendas, and so on. Again, that's a much deeper, more profound place to meet each other. Yeah, so we're not battling for supremacy, if you like, within relationship. Yeah.
I'm reminded, and we were looking for it maybe a little bit earlier, was that Osho, I don't know exactly what he said, so many things that he would have said about this, but when two silences meet, true relationship can happen, or something.
I think,
that's exactly what he was pointing to, I think. Is that right?
I think he said it in various ways. And I think one of the phrases was, when two silences meet, true love can blossom.
True love, yes. He wouldn't
And
say relationship.
No, I think he would say that relationship kills love, destroys love. In other words, what he was referring to was the conventional paradigm of relationship in which we need somebody to complete us.
Yes.
We're looking for our other half. We're looking for our soulmate, or we're looking for the one who will take care of us until death do us part. Yeah. So we'll stick by each other, come what may, even if we are controlling, demanding, manipulating, and so on. So yeah, relationship in that sense is the end of true love. In order for real love to flower, we must abandon all concepts of relationship.
Yeah, that's he would posit, and it seems to me, the deeper I've looked at this in many ways, that relationship in the conventional and historic way is actually an idea. It's a belief, and it's a belief born out of an unconscious egoic needing state, exactly as you're pointing to, that actually doesn't have anything to do with our intrinsic capacity to be solitary in not in the physical sense, but solitary in the spiritual sense. Let's say the silence and solitude are synonymous. They're both pointing in this context to the same thing. So what we're talking about is heading off in a completely different direction from this conventional religious almost belief in a happy ever after, or till death us do part, or all of these kind of perennial thoughts and beliefs about relationship.
Yes, I mean, the contract of marriage on a conventional sense is exactly that, a contract. And in that contract, we are really, in some ways, unconsciously signing an agreement or making an agreement to bring our agendas, to bring our demands, to bring our needs, to be taken care of, to be loved, to be adored, to be all of those hidden agendas, or not so hidden agendas, to provide for each other, there are many agendas in relationships. So it's like a contract, an unconscious contract. And when that contract is unconscious, then it's a prison, a bind. Yeah. True marriage starts with the marriage within. True marriage starts with communion with, or rather through, aloneness, through our essential nature that can only be known through the doorway of aloneness. In other words, going deep within ourselves. Like you said, it's not about necessarily physical aloneness, but knowing our true nature, going deep within ourselves, deep into the core identity. Are we a separate self? A limited self, a lacking self, a worthless self, an unloved self, an abandoned self that needs someone to provide that which is lacking on an emotional or a physical level. Yeah, it's all the same. So we must go in, and through that doorway of aloneness, we come face to face with that core belief. And that's can be frightening, it can be revolting, it can be very vulnerable. But through that doorway, we may come to discover that we are none of that. Yeah, they're all false structures, that we create for ourselves, and we might come to know energetically not intellectually, that we are complete, we are whole, we are not lacking. We are the source of that which we seek. And that's a communion with, or an inner marriage with our God essence, our essential self. That's the primary marriage. When we've come to know that, then we don't foist our demands and agendas on another. Then we can enter a dimension of relating that isn't imprisoned by the idea of relationship. True relating, because the truth is, whether we live in solitude or not, we operate in this world as human beings that do relate to each other.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we enter the field of relating. It's not an avoidance of relating, but it is coming into that relating without the boundary or limitation or prison of any idea of relationship. And then relationship isn't a thing anymore. It's a field of human experience. Yeah, the field of relating. We meet each other. Yeah, we meet other human beings from a deep inner dimension of peace, openness, fulfillment. Yeah, which means that we are not seeking the other to fulfill us. We're not seeking the other to make us happy. We're not seeking the other to make us feel loved, because all of that is who we are at our core. So we come into meeting each other from that place. That completely transforms personal relationship, and it transforms all interactions in the world, all of them. The end. We could stop right there.
Amoda, you're astonishing sometimes, because you give no quarter. That's what I love about you, and I've always have loved about you, is you just sort of have a Zen-like capacity to cut through the illusion of, whether it's a recent illusion or 1,000 years old. And this is a kind of cutting through that, because I hear you, and of course I'm with you in this. I discovered my own true solitude and silence within the context of this relationship, rather, because I think you steadfastly or naturally, whichever, when I first encountered you, you were established in the silence and solitude of your being. So there's a whole spin-off of conversation from that. It's like, what it takes is this a dance, that two can actually be involved in? Or what you just pointed to was that, essentially for the human incarnation, for the individuation born into or emerging into this existence as we know it, it's all relationship. It's all relationship. And either that all relationship is either unconscious, or at some point, unless you're born enlightened, at some point it becomes conscious. It becomes, you have to, but that consciousness has nothing to do with intimate relationship, and has everything to do with discovering for oneself solitude and silence, regardless of whether there's an intimate relationship or not. If it appears, it's grace. And if it doesn't appear, it's also grace.
Yes. And for me, this was in stark contrast. Yeah. If you like, on one side of the metaphorical fence, I was very needy in relationship. Not only did I need relationship, right up until my, round about my 40th year, I needed relationship. I I needed relationship in order to feel in any way lovable or somehow belonging to something, included. I just couldn't, in some ways, connect with myself without relationship. And so I was needy in relationship. I was needy in, well, I wasn't particularly controlling, but perhaps in some subtle way, but I just needed relationship to prove to myself that I was lovable.
Worthy,
and worthy, absolutely worthy.
Yeah.
And any rejection in that, any arguments, any disagreement, any difference would be taken as a sign of rejection or unworthiness. So I and that was a primary driving force in my life, or one of them at least. And so that was in stark contrast to something that sort of almost flipped overnight into the grace and fulfillment of aloneness. And again, not just physical aloneness, although that has a role to play in order to discover true solitude, but it wasn't really about that. It was about the inner aloneness, the inner solitude that brought me face to face, or if you like, a head-on collision with the core structure or belief about abandonment. And somehow that transformed itself. Well, we don't necessarily have to go into the story of that here, because I've spoken about it so many times, but just to demonstrate that complete contrast. Yeah. So suddenly unexpectedly, there was no more need for relationship. There was no more need to find a soulmate, to find love, because the deepest knowing was that I am love. There's nothing to complete. And it was experienced as an inner marriage that ended all need for any external proof of that. And then, of course, as you know, the miracle in some ways, or the surprise, was that you entered my life shortly after that. And there was a very clear and obvious invitation from life to enter again the experience of a human intimate relationship, but it was entered in a completely different way. And it was there was some, at first, a little bit of trepidation. It's like, well, am I falling back into some old pattern here? But actually the deeper knowing and the deeper impulse was that, no, this is something else. And it was experienced, and still is experienced, completely differently. Well, we can both testify that need to be fulfilled by each other is not a driving element.
What I want to do, I'm like, I always want to convey to people that there's no judging state going on here about the unconscious activity of what of what we are, what we get up to in relationship, because we've both experienced it completely. And this is not about judging that as bad and this is good, but there is something that's happened here, and if it's happening or happened here, then it's entirely possible and entirely worthwhile to kind of talk about it. And neither is it positing enlightened relationship as some kind of edifice, some kind of superhuman kind of place, because we still relate in have to sort of negotiate in a way. Two human beings who've got different chemistries, by, you know, we're still having an ongoing ordinary relationship. It's just that it's clean all the time. And by clean, I think I mean the solitude and the silence is at the root of everything that we do. And we both individually and together are devoted to that. Above all, above our individuality, I'm not trying to please you, you're not trying to please me, but I am utterly respectful of your solitude and silence at the root of your being, and you are of mine. And so, you know, that's a kind of a foundation. Yeah. But there is something that I just want to kind of go over a little bit, because when I came into this relationship, you were that, I would call it, I don't know, clean, let's say. Yeah, there was no, I think you divested of a lot of your karma at that point, and there was a freshness, and there was a mirror-like quality, and there was something remarkable about what I met with you. But I still had these, what I call the tentacles that were still, yeah, they were still active, they were still alive, there was still neediness going on in me, there was some kind of projection. You know, these things weren't vast, but they were still playing themselves out. And so we were at different points in our journey towards solitude, let's say. Yeah, solitude happens when you die. We're both either the death of the ego or the death of the physical form and the ego. But we were on, you had already become established in that silence, and I was kind of, let's say, on my journey, although I didn't even realize it was a journey at that point. So the question is, do two people, can two people negotiate their way in relationship? What I'm trying to get to is a lot of people are in relationship at the moment, but the relationship is built on, because everybody has been built on noise and need, let's just call it that. One person starts the giddy process of awakening to their silence and solitude. The other person is either lagging behind, or not interested, or whatever it is. What happens in that? Where is that?
If I can address it just from our personal experience, or my personal experience in our relationship first, I think it might be important to highlight that the respect or the protection or the, let's say, honoring of your solitude was in those early stages where, like you say, there was still some unconscious needs and patterns in you. Yeah, the respect for that solitude was not to try and control you in that, not to tell you you were wrong. Yeah, so there's no agenda even in that. What's being respected is your journey in that. And if I don't react to it from a place of righteousness or sense of rejection in myself, or sense of, oh, there's something wrong with the relationship, it's not perfect, it's not enlightened, that's not what we mean. It's not we don't mean an enlightened relationship is perfect and that it's super spiritual. There's none of that coming in. So I'm listening and being with you in silence. There's no noise in me in response or in reaction to that. I might be able to see it, but in seeing it, it doesn't have any hook in me. And if it doesn't have any hook in me, it will undo itself, as it has done. So that's allowing you to be on your journey without holding up any sense of I'm more elevated.
Yeah.
So
was that in a way because you could see the honest movement within me that I was actually, on a profound journey for myself. Yeah.
I think it was, I mean,
There wasn't a game. I wasn't playing a game. I was responding to the truth of the dynamic of the invitation, which was, wow, I'm going to have to burn in this, for instance. I remember this burning.
Yeah, I think that your availability,
yes,
to the truth of love was very obvious. And again, I don't mean it in some kind of conceptual or intellectual or even spiritual sense. It's just that when those hooks arose, or those tentacles arose, and they had nothing to hook into, well, they very quickly undid themselves in you. Yeah. That's your availability. We can call that that's your karmic journey. Yes. That karma was ready to be undone, which is why you came into the relationship. So the initial impulse from my part to say yes to this relationship was absolutely right. In that way, we serve each other in some way. Amazing. And we serve love. Yeah. So, because, of course, if you had come in and those tentacles kept on, and there was control and there was, a sort of an emotional violence, well, very quickly I would say, no, thank you, goodbye.
That's exactly where I was going with this, because that's the nature of the devotion. Yeah. The nature, as you've talked about in the teaching a million times, is what is your deepest longing and what is your deepest devotion? This is a profound question that we each kind of need to ask. Yeah. Is it to, I need this person, or is it to, I need fulfillment from the other or from the world, or is it to something much deeper, much juicier, whatever the cost, whether one spends one's time alone or not?
Yes, that's right. So then the second part of your question when we started this part of the conversation was, well, what about, people who are in a relationship, perhaps one is awakening and developing or turning towards this deeper allegiance, it's coming alive in them, and the other is not so available for this, it's just not part of their journey right now. And again, there's no judgment or right or wrong, that's just the way it is. What can be done? Is it possible? Well, this is it. This is what you've just said is kind of the response to that, is if you turn your allegiance to the truth, to the silence, to the truth of silence within, then you can meet the other from that. How they respond to it is up to them. That's respecting their solitude, their singular journey. How they respond to it is up to them. So if they choose, again, it's not really a choice from a intellectual level, but somehow the deeper self, it chooses this, hears this, listens to this, is available for this, then something very transformative is likely to happen within that relationship. Or they may actually react with more defensiveness, defendedness, more violence, if you like, more demand, more aggression in some way, or more retreat into themselves, not in a diving into solitude, but retreating into themselves in a way of being detached, being unavailable, being closed down. In which case, the one who is more attuned to that deeper, to their innermost truth, then does have a choice to either carry on in that relationship because there's still a need for something or a fear of losing something, or to trust that deeper listening, and really that relationship has fulfilled its purpose for we're not until death do us part.
No.
Yeah. we're until death of the ego brings us together. Really. Yeah.
That would be a good vow to have. Because that absolutely, you said that really perfectly. That's in that sense, this that we're we're pointing to and calling attention to really is ruthless. It is ruthless, not in the way that's, harsh or cruel or anything, but in a way that is true to the individuation, becomes more true to the individuation in the individual soul, that's longing to be steeped in truth and in homeness of itself.
Well,
and
truth and love are radical.
Yes,
They're
they
radical.
are.
It can't be half-hearted. You can't have your cake and eat it. It's all of it.
And I think that again, without pointing to Osho too many times, but he did blow. I remember him blowing a hole in any idea of relationship as a something stretching beyond when it's alive. It is, a relationship lasts as long as it's alive, as long as it's got a vibrancy, as long as it's got something true in it. And then as soon as it is hijacked, in a sense, by something else, and it turns into the kind of war that's being talked about, it's actually over and we're living in a dead place.
That's right.
I don't want to be cruel about it, but I've lived in a dead place. I lived in a relationship for 12 years. And I would say at least 10 of those years were dead. And I wasn't just dead, she was dead. We were both dead. And we were living, like an iceberg with some part of us on the surface, but most of us living in the shadow world where we couldn't face the truth of our aloneness or each other's aloneness. And it was a nightmare until the Titanic crashed into it. The Titanic was liberation.
Yeah. And the beauty is that when the commitment is to the truth of the deepest, when the commitment is to the discovery or the allowing of love to reveal itself beyond the need for relationship, then the relationship we have on a human level, seems to continue forever. It seems to continue in the eternal now. And so there's no in some ways there's no reason to separate on a human level, because it continues in that truth. And it continues in that open field of love. So there's no problem.
In some ways, the idea of relationship, which is, kind of has been born of a primal procreative impulse, but it was also the unconsciousness of the human ancestral past. Then relationship really is the story of that, isn't it? The story of relationship is the story of a primal need, a primal procreative impulse, and the unconsciousness of the species, without mincing words. And I think that there is another way. And because if humanity suddenly became awakened, let's say, terrible thing to say, but if it suddenly mysteriously happened, ipso facto, relationship would change.
Yes, we'd meet each other from a very different space. We'd listen to each other from a very different space. And that means that we may be in intimate relationship, we may be living with somebody or not. It'll sort of rebalance itself in some ways. And then the question arises, well, why would you be living with anyone at all? Well, then we have sort of a possibility of the purpose of relationship, which will not be for safety, security, procreation, although it may include the conscious bringing up of a child or bringing a child into the world, but the space of the relationship from this, if you like, inner transformation will be one that supports the solitude and the integrity and the sovereignty of that child. Again, that unconscious control and agenda and so on won't be brought into the relationship with the child. So then the relationship between two individuals who perhaps, let's say, live together and interact, collaborate, negotiate, yes, all on a human level, earthly level, supports the nurturing of that new life in a if you like, different way, or certainly deeper way, or a more integral way than the unconscious relationship that is very prevalent here in our relationship with children or with offspring, very often, not always, but very often. Yeah, so that's one purpose. So it does have a procreative quality to it, but it's not an unconscious procreation. And another reason for being with somebody, living with somebody, is, again, another purpose opens up, it reveals itself beyond the need for safety and security and all the other things that we were talking about, which is it could flower as a actual collaboration, yeah, an endeavor, an enterprise, a project, something that you put into the world, a service, something creative that is a joint. It comes jointly, and that's a very beautiful thing that can flower. So that inner wholeness and sanctity, yes, it manifests in the world. So it's inner and outer, and again, that changes. Well, that would change the whole structure of humanity in some ways, wouldn't it?
As you're sitting here, I'm sort of vibrating with a sudden, ridiculous, but a vision of a completely transformed humanity in its way of relating to each other. Because it would be, what I hear, because I personally, I don't have much time for the nuclear idea, the idea of the nuclear family, because I think it's created these pockets of suffering over history, over time, and marginalized, isolated these separate individuals, not only separate individuations, but separate pockets of individuations which have their own rules, and whether they're healthy or usually unhealthy, their whole dynamics, and actually each one's separated from the whole. Yeah, and it is, to me, I'm just seeing that it's not functional. It doesn't work. It's certainly not, generally speaking, harmonious. And what I'm, in my heart or somewhere in my vision, my Aquarian vision, the visionariness, I see a whole different way. But it has to be steeped in harmony, and that harmony has to be within.
Yes, I see that too. I don't think it's far-fetched. I mean, it seems far-fetched right now, given the human condition and the global condition, both on an individual and collective level. But it's not far-fetched when we recognize that it's actually available to each of us. Unconsciousness can flip into consciousness very quickly. Once it does, it's radical, it's complete. And then how we relate will automatically change. And it'll be very natural. It's not, some far-reaching idea. It's actually very natural. Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
So, it's extraordinary to imagine that.
You see, for me, that points to willingness, the willingness. You held some, you were something, you held some fire, and you held true. You held true to that fire. Yeah. And that fire then ignited something in me that I chose through willingness to burn through, let's say. And now I have that fire and I ignite others with it because I'm in relationship. I'm in relationship with a client. I'm in a relationship with my neighbor. I'm in a relationship with every single entity. Yeah. And my solitude emanates through the very essence of who I am. So is it so far away? I'm not sure whether it's so far away. We think it's so far away because we're always spending time thinking. But actually, you know, the fire is close, and
that's right.
We wouldn't talk about this if it wasn't so kind of exquisite, to be honest. There's an ordinary exquisiteness about your solitude and the respect and love I have for it, and my solitude, and the respect and love I have for my solitude.
That's right. And I think that's true, that when we meet others, you know, in the ordinary everyday interactions, we do meet them from that silence. We're not foisting our opinions and our agendas and all of that into what may become a friendship or may not become a friendship. It may be just a friendship in the moment and then you've moved on. We don't come with that. So in that sense, we're not bringing need into any friendship, and we're allowing the other to be just as they are and listening to the quietness of their innermost, even if they're not aware of it.
Yeah. Even if they're noisy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And that means that there's a true meeting in that, momentary or, you know, for a period of time, and then that's it. Yeah. And that friendship may come back into our lives, and perhaps it'll flower into something, or perhaps not, and none of it matters. And so from that place, one doesn't get into entanglements, one doesn't get into arguments, one doesn't get into feeling left out socially or in any other way. There's no need to belong to anything, to a group, that's very tribal. Even belonging to a family, that's very tribal.
That's right.
So this is like a transforming of the tribal nature of the human condition. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. And when you don't need to belong to a tribe, your deepest belonging is to the truth. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about. That changes everything. And in that deepest belonging, we all belong to the same. We all belong in the one, as the one. And that ends the war of tribalism.
Yes. It ends the war of tribalism.
Right.
Which is the dominant mindset, psychological, emotional, and spiritual mindset of the majority of the conditioned state, whether it's on the political level or the personal collective level.
That's right. And that tribal mindset, unconscious though it is, or because it's unconscious, is the need to find fulfillment by belonging, by agreeing ideologically or in some action or in some idea of some unit, whether it's a family unit, a national unit, or that stems ultimately from a sense of lack. Sense of incompleteness. So the root of it is know thyself, know thy true nature that is indivisible, undivided, not lacking. It is fulfilled in and of itself, because beingness does not need to be added to.
Oh, my dear, every conversation that we have, I think every podcast that we've had ends up pretty much at the same place,
Well, it
which is
has to be.
that awakening within, being true to within, is the only true journey.
It's the only solution to any problem.
Can't negotiate your way out of this one. Love consists of this: two solitudes that meet, protect, and greet each other. I hold this to be the highest task of a bond between two people, that each should stand guard over the solitude of the other. How Rilke came to that realization without being steeped in non-duality or embodied enlightenment or Advaita is quite extraordinary, because it conveys a kind of insight and awareness that is beyond the conventional. And personally, when I discovered that, I was in awe of the clarity of that, those statements. So I'd hats off and much respect to Rilke for that.
Yeah, well, I think if you know, if you without following any spiritual path or seeking awakening, if you dive in and examine the nature or the root of misery within oneself, then you will come to a deep realization of your essential nature.
What you like have to go through, you have to get to the bottom, to the main pin,
Yes,
to the bottom
that's
level,
right.
as it were. Yeah.
Yes, and some of those individuals with a philosophical inquiry, looking into the human condition, born of their own misery, their own suffering. And I can't remember the exact details of Rilke's, life, but the suffering itself, when it's truly examined, can reveal what the main pin is that holds it all together. And one can call that spiritual, or one can call that the willingness to examine the root of suffering. That's the end of it, really.
Yeah, I discovered that with the existentialists.
Yes, exactly.
Same thing. I discovered that many years ago when I was a teenager with the existentialists, that probably conspired to set me on the journey, because they were down at misery. Many of them, the French existentialists, were down in the gutter on misery. Certainly Sartre was, and he had no way of reconciling that. Yeah.
Yes. And some of them broke through to true nature, and some of them didn't.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Wow. Okay. I think we've reached the point of no return in this particular conversation. We could take off and go on some other route, but we're not going to for this one. Okay.
I think that's good. It's beautiful.
Yeah. If anybody's ever interested in dissecting, looking at, or exploring this in a deeper kind of, more, not methodical is not the right word, but we don't do anything methodical, but a deeper inquiry into relationship, we're running a course on relationship in the future. So come and take a look at Amoda's website. But this is complete in and of itself. And these are a joy for us, these conversations. It's always a joy for me exploring the world of Amoda Maa and trying to get the juice. Yeah, the bottom line here.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Are you good?
I'm very good.
Okay. In that case, friends, thank you so much for joining us. We hopefully won't leave it so long before we put another podcast together. I know Amoda's speaking with somebody next week or the week after.
Ellen,
So
yes,
Ellen
Emmett.
Emmett, who we've had on before, and that's a delight. And that'll be different from listening to the endless stream of my voice. Whether you like it or not, I don't care. Amoda, I think there's a couple of words or a few words we have to say just to satisfy us and everybody else.
I'll see you in the kitchen.
Oh God, it's like a cliche now, isn't it? However, I will see you in the kitchen, and thank you so much. I love you deeply, deeply, and I do respect your solitude. However, we're all going to adjourn to the kitchen for a piece of toast or something, such thing. I know. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you again soon. Be well. Bye-bye.
Beautiful.